This RealAg Radio podcast episode is brought to you by Coragen Max Insecticide from FMC. Get fast, selective, extended control of grasshoppers, Bertha armyworms, diamondback moth, and cutworms in a convenient, concentrated formulation. Coragen Max Insecticide works alongside beneficials for a 1-2 punch that keeps the fight going long after you've left the field.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout out to everybody listening out there, as always, on the RealAg Radio podcast. Well, today on the program, we're going to hear from the Chief Executive Officer at the Canadian Meat Council, the CMC, Chris White, and he was recently in China. I think he got back on the weekend over there talking about, of course, pork exports, beef exports, both under some different challenges when it comes to trying to get product into that market. And China, definitely an important market for agricultural exports, but there is some challenges. Of course, it's not lost on any of you that not only are there tariffs on pork, Canadian seafood, as well as canola oil and meal. And Chris was on the ground there last week, so I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say. What was the mood? How was Canada viewed and all that kind of stuff, and why the trip now, and just how often they go, and kind of learn a little bit more from him on that. I know he goes to China quite often. We're also going to hear from Dan Bolton, who is with KWS Seeds Canada. We're going to talk about hybrid rye and learning a little bit about how we judge the crop as it comes out of dormancy here as things start to warm up. I know some of you have been very happy with your hybrid rye over the past couple of years, so we're going to do a little bit of an agronomic segment on that. And then we've got Steve Larouque. He is the chair of Nuffield Canada. Their new application window is open. This is something that I've never done. I've never thought about becoming a Nuffield scholar. I kind of regret. I wish maybe I would have. Maybe there's still an opportunity, but this is a cool program where people go around the world on a project, bring that information home to the Canadian market, to their own operation. It's very fabulous. I say Sherilyn Nagel, who you hear sometimes on the Friday show, she is currently a Nuffield scholar. She's been all over the place. She's doing hers on, I think, renewable energy as it applies to agriculture. I think is what her project is. So looking forward to having Steve on here. And then we're going to do 2 technology features. And Real Agriculture's team is going to all these trade shows and conferences and doing all this kind of stuff. And not all that content, actually very little of it, actually works its way into this program. And I thought what I'd do today is we have 2 technology features. So one's in the dairy industry and one is in just general agriculture. So we're going to hear from Dr. Shari Vanderpol with Cattleytics, which is a software program for the dairy industry. And then we've got Kendal Quandahl, who's with Case IH, to talk about some of their platform as well. So we'll learn about some technology here today on the program as well. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all different social media platforms, or why not just call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Well, we're going to talk to Chris White here from the CMC in a second after the break, but some real China news here the last, 24 hours. So we know we've had this escalation between the Trump administration. Jim Wiesmeyer talked about this yesterday. We've got this escalating situation between the White House and China. And I don't know what tariff amount they're at this point. I don't know. It could be 150, 250. Who really knows? It just continued to escalate. And both kind of called a little bit of a, I don't know if it's a truce, but it kind of stopped. It stalled out because at some point, the tariff becomes so large, it doesn't matter if it's 150% or it's 1,000%, just not a lot of businesses happening. And Jim Wiesmeyer talked about yesterday when he was on the show, talked about the fact that, soybean exports to China could be really poor if this tariff level holds. Well, it looks like the White House has maybe backed off or is intending to back off its strong stance on these tariffs on China. So I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal. There's many people that have reported on this, but Trump administration considers slashing tariffs on Chinese imports to de-escalate trade tensions. So they haven't been able to get China to the table. So the strength of their tariff response has not brought China crawling and saying, hey, we need to negotiate. China said, we're not doing it under these kinds of tensions. So tariffs could come down between roughly 50 and 65%. A tiered approach is being considered. 35% levies for items the U.S. deems not a national security threat, and at least 100% levies for strategic items. China is open to trade talks, but warns against negotiating under continued threats from the U.S. So this is going to be viewed a whole bunch of different ways. And depending on which maybe political side you're on or how hawkish you are personally on China, some are going to view this as the Trump administration basically backing down, having to change tact. Some people are going to say it shows the U.S. White House and the trade officials there have some flexibility built into their plan. Some are going to say that China is winning this because they're backing off. Some people are going to say that China is losing this because they're backing off. You're going to hear a lot of different opinions that are out there. I guess at the end of the day, whatever version you want to craft around that, probably a good thing for the global economy if the tensions are lowered in some respects, but we'll have to wait and see. As we know, this whole tariff situation is on again, off again, and what you thought this morning could not be the truth in the afternoon. So let's not get too excited and run around and celebrate yet. There's still a lot of work to be done. And here's one of the things that is a concern to a lot of people that is out there following this very closely is if these two of the largest economies in the world come together and have some sort of agreement, what does that mean for the rest of the countries that are trying to do business with China? What does it mean for a country like Canada? What does it mean for Mexico or members of the European Union? Is there going to be some agreements there from, hey, you shall do business with us, not with them? That is another thing that some people are speculating and watching very closely, as are we. So if you got any thoughts on that, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Chris White from the Canadian Meat Council right after this.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh!
You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify.
It's time for today's Product Spotlight, and joining me now is Jason Mann. He's president of Genesis Fertilizers. Transportation costs obviously are a huge component of the price of fertilizer. So how does leveraging the Port of Churchill and the Hudson's Bay Railway, so through the Arctic Gateway Group, how does this help reduce the cost and provide more stable access to fertilizer for prairie farmers specifically?
So we're trying to open up new supply channels. There's not many suppliers in the market of phosphate today. So if we have the competitiveness of being able to go buy Panamax vessels from a supplier overseas, we should be able to get a better purchase price. We can have a little bit more efficient logistics. So if we can get it here on a vessel to Churchill, then we're really talking about maybe only 1,000 miles of rail to get it into Western Canada. And likely at a better rail rate. Because we're having this partnership with Arctic Gateway Group, we'd be looking at favorable rail rates for a large portion of that trackage from Churchill down to the Paw.
For anyone who's looking for more information, head on over to the Genesis Fertilizers website.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, in response to client requests, CCIA now offers a privacy consent option that lets us share your contact info to help recover lost, stray, or found livestock, all while keeping other details private. Learn more at support.canadaid.ca. Well, speaking of livestock, export's very, very important. One of the major trade markets for Canadian meat products is, of course, China. And there's no shortage of issues with China from a Canadian perspective. And then when you work in the U.S. side of the equation, things get really muddy, especially in weeks like this. But the work still goes on. And joining us right now to talk about some of that work is the CEO of the Canadian Meat Council, as well as CEO of Canadian Pork. It is Chris White. Chris, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Shaun. Nice to see you. Nice to always talk with you, and thanks for making time for me.
Yeah, well, likewise. Now, fresh off a trip to China, tell us about the length of the trip and the purpose.
It was about 10 days. Purpose is ostensibly to go over every 3 to 4 months, meet with Chinese officials, meet with officials at our embassy and Chinese NGOs to continue to build a relationship, talk about issues that they may have with our sector and any issues that we may have in terms of access or frustrations that we may have, and try and figure out ways in which we can move the issues forward constructively, and then just to ensure that our officials at the embassy or the consulates have a good understanding of what we're trying to do and achieve in China.
A lot of focus as of late on tariffs that China put on Canadian pork. Is there a status update of that?
They continue to exist. I can't imagine that they will be taken off until a new government is in place, and particularly the new government sends a signal, and that either will be a signal similar to what we've seen over the last 12 to 18 months with the UK and the Australian governments, which was effectively sort of a, not necessarily a reset, but a recalibration of the relationship. And certainly talking to Chinese officials, they are in a wait and see mode. What will the new government's tone be with them? Where will there be some issues of commonality? And in particular, will the new government do anything with respect to reducing tariffs on Chinese EVs, which is a major irritant for them?
Yeah, a bit of a puzzle, though, because the U.S. seems to be asking a lot of trade partners around the world to be tougher on China.
Well, I think that's true. On the other hand, if you perhaps saw last night in remarks that Trump made in the Oval Office, he was saying that he thinks there will be a deal with China and that the tariffs will be reduced. So I think, you look at what he's saying, that will take some pressure off of other countries vis-a-vis China. And certainly you look at some of the efforts that the EU has made, or some of the comments recently with respect to reducing tariffs on EVs as well. So I think, much like we have all been enduring for the last number of months, all this economic churn, the comments last night coming out of the Oval, I think certainly will help to just, not necessarily calibrate everybody, but just allow everybody to say, or to at least feel that there is a path forward. And I think certainly up until last night, that was not the case. There was a concern that, China had said they would not escalate further the tariffs, but we are so dependent on what takes place out of Washington and the Trump administration that I think those comments at least give the new government, when they come in, some opportunity to find a path forward.
Canadian beef, now not a tariff, but that atypical case, is that still causing us grief trying to get product into China?
Well, we're not back. Certainly when I speak to Chinese officials, what they will say is they have all of the information they need from the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, from our embassy, and from industry. And so they're waiting. We're sort of in a holding pattern, right? So again, I think it would be great to be back in, because the demographics of the Chinese middle class are only going to grow. And it's a very, important market as we look to diversify perhaps from the U.S. a little bit. So we are always hopeful. And every time I meet with Chinese officials, I gently remind them, that we would like to be back in. And, to the advantage of the Chinese consumer, both the Canadian pork and Canadian beef is world-class quality, but as you would also appreciate and know, it's underpinned by world-class science, which differentiates the product from many other countries.
Yeah, and one of the things about China too, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is there's not a lot of transparency on the timeline. We've seen it with trait development, where it's just sort of like we wake up on a Saturday, it's like, oh, approved, we're good. Yeah,
no, I think that's fair. I think I would also say, though, that at times we have the same frustration with CFIA, right? That government makes a policy, right? But, I think the other consideration, and what I say to our members and to my board, is food security is such a critical issue, as it is in most countries, but in China in particular, right? Because you've got a population of 1.4 billion, and, they've got product coming in from almost every country in the world as either the number one and number two export market. So for them to make a determination with respect to an atypical case of BSE, it's not like it's a small decision, because it has implications and ramifications. So would we like it to have been resolved by now? Absolutely. But at the same time, we have to be mindful and respectful that they have a process, and it's their country. We want our product to go in, and we don't want to, do anything that would cause them any further irritation or angst. So we just have to respect that when they're ready, they're ready. And I'm optimistic that we will be back in. But when is always the unknown.
With the tariffs on pork, are we still able to ship? Is pork still moving into that market, or is the tariff prevent it from doing so?
No, we're fortunate in the sense that it wasn't 100% like it was on canola. So it's at 25%. So pork is still going in, and we expect that it will continue to go in. Obviously, the margins will be less, and some companies may decide that they may want to look at other markets that don't have not imposed a tariff. But as of now, at least, that we still do have some product going in for sure.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, depending on the transaction, how that tariff amount is handled, it could be different. It's not a consistent, like, you're paying, I'm paying. There's probably a lot of different versions of that, I would assume.
Yeah, there is. I mean, certainly we don't get into the business lines for our members, but certainly anecdotally, to your point, yeah, there's a number of ways in which companies are trying to ensure that they continue to not just get pork in, but that they maintain their relationships with their Chinese customers, with their Chinese traders, and et cetera.
I'm curious, being on the ground in China, you've been to China lots in your career.
Yes.
What's the can't speak for them, but I guess people are interested. Like, what do people think about Canada? When like, are we persona non grata, or is there this relationship can be repaired, or like what kind of reception are you receiving?
It's on balance, it's quite warm, frankly. I think historically Canada and China have enjoyed a long-standing bilateral relationship, over 50 years, and certainly there's a lot of areas of commonality. Canada hosted on behalf of China COP15 in Montreal a couple of years ago. There's a lot of tourism to China, or there has been historically, educational opportunities and transfers. Certainly, like there is on the part of Canadians, there's some lingering frustration and anger with respect to the two Michaels. Conversely, on the part of the Chinese, they feel that's the same way with respect to Meng Wanzhou. But certainly, when I talk to Chinese officials, both in China and at the embassy in Ottawa here, they're very clear, right? They want to find a path forward. They want to find ways in which they can, continue to enjoy a good, productive bilateral relationship with China. But for them, they feel that, there has been a level of disrespect coming out of the previous government, much like we would also say, right, that we feel that there have been instances and examples where we could point to. But I do get the sense in talking to officials that they're looking to move past that. So when this new government comes in, it is an opportunity to recalibrate or reestablish a more maybe transactional relationship, and it's not so emotive. So there is a strong desire, and certainly I've never felt uncomfortable, or no one's ever been objectively rude to me in a meeting or anything like that. They're perplexed at times in terms of why Canada has done X or Y or Z. But I would also say that there's a bit of empathy that they've been to China now 3 times so far this year. And as the escalation of U.S. tariffs kept rising when I was in China, there was empathy for Canada, right? How could they be doing this to you? You're their best friend. You're their best partner. So no, I would say on balance, Shaun, there's a desire to get back to what it has been historically.
And overall, all that being said, for Canadian meat products, a lot of times here we talk about beef and pork, but there's more. That the Chinese market is an important market because of that changing middle class that you spoke about.
No, it's a significant market. Certainly on the pork side, because there's part of the product that goes, which are called the offals, which is basically the only market that we can send it to. And if it doesn't go there, then it ends up in rendering. The point I was making about the middle class is right now there's about 450 million, Chinese middle class. In the next 15 years or so, that's expected to double. And as that middle class doubles, there's also an increasing shift in their desire for higher quality proteins. Yeah. So that's why it's really important that we get beef back into that market, because right now the Brazilians have probably about a 55-60% share of that market. pardon me, and certainly other countries as well. And we know the quality of Canadian beef, and we want to be part of that. The advantage the Brazilians have is that Lula has gone, a number of times to Brazil. Yep. So we were fortunate last fall when Minister Macaulay went, and certainly we're hoping that, again, with the new government, we will see some more high-profile visits of ministers, and perhaps even, in the next few years, Prime Minister to President bilateral meeting.
Hey, Chris, I want your personal opinion on this, and or it could be on behalf of CMC. You tell me. But do we need more people on the ground in markets like China? Like, do we? Sorry, what's that?
100%.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. Okay, because this comes up a lot in my discussions. My perception has been that.
Yes.
You're more on the know here, and you've been on the ground there lots. Give us the why. Why do we need more resources on the ground?
Because much like it is in Ottawa, when you're looking to influence a policy decision of a minister or of a government, you can't just come in once or twice a year. It's a very slow and incremental and very tactical build. You have to build the trust, build the understanding, build and provide really cogent analysis as to why. So if you're only in once or twice a year, from an industry perspective, well, that's not going to do it. From an official's perspective, China is very hierarchical, but it builds from the ground up. So, we go in and we have meetings with our counterparts, and we may get some meetings with officials. That's very useful. Our ambassador, former Ambassador Barton was terrific. Ambassador May is doing a great job for us and her team. But, they also have limitations. And when we're competing against many other countries that have high-profile visits, so the week I was there, the Spanish Prime Minister had just had visited. Next month in May, Lula is coming from Brazil. There's an expectation that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the UK, is going to be there this fall. Yeah. And then last fall, when I was there, the German Chancellor, if I'm not mistaken, had been there. But, a series of high-profile visits. And Minister Joly had a couple of meetings last year. But, we just need to have that sustained presence, because what the signal the Chinese are often looking for and saying that they're looking for is that this market is important to you. And if you're only there once or twice a year versus other countries that have larger embassies or consulates or larger trade delegations that are constantly coming through, their perception is, well, you tell me it's important, Shaun, but it's not borne out by the fact that you've only been here once or twice and you've gone to maybe a trade show, but you haven't come to Beijing to meet with any officials. So you can say it's important, but your actions belie a different reality from our perspective. So that's why the more sustained presence is really important, and that's why, as I was saying to you, going over 3 or 4 months is really important, just to kind of touch base and to remind them that we're here, we want to build a relationship. What you may not be aware of is that the meat industry is actually opening an advocacy office later this year in Beijing. And it's for that very reason, right? To have a sustained presence on the ground, much like we do in Ottawa and in other capitals.
Yeah, fascinating. Chris, really appreciate you joining us. Great insights. I appreciate the insights from your recent trip last week, and really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Always nice to talk to you, Shaun. Take care.
Great stuff. That is Chris White. He is CEO of the Canadian Meat Council and Canadian Pork. Applying your tags with the manufacturer's recommended applicator for your specific tag can help prevent losses from factors beyond your control. The right applicator locks the components together, increasing retention. For best practices, visit retentionmatters.ca, or you can call 877-909-2333. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomists, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomists with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
It's summertime, and you've got a lot of important decisions to make when it comes to your corn crop. Let the Corn School on RealAgriculture.com help guide you through those big decisions with input from leading experts in the field. If it's spray timing, disease identification, or any other field issue, the Corn School's got you covered. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM. It's time for a product spotlight with KWS Seeds Canada. We're joined right now by Dan Bolton, who's the territory manager for the Eastern Prairies for KWS. Dan, how are we doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to chat with you. So we're at that time of the year where hybrid rye is going to break dormancy. And what steps should growers take to evaluate their stand, and what population should they be targeting?
Great question. So yeah, when hybrid rye breaks dormancy in the spring, growers should take several steps to evaluate their plant stand and target the right population. So conducting a plant count helps evaluate the strength of your stand going into the spring. So we like to say choose a well-represented area in your field and flag that location so you can return to it later. Our preferred method involves using a tape measure and based on row width to count the plants in a specific area and then extrapolating that count to the entire field. So I'll back it up a little bit before to talk about target here. So rye is sold per unit, and our recommended seeding rate is 1 unit per acre. And what a unit is 1 million viable seeds. So we're essentially adjusting the seeding rates for 100% germination. So by the math, if you're planting 1 million seeds per acre, divide that by 43,560 square foot in an acre, we're looking for about 22 plants per square foot. But we know that we grow this outside, everything doesn't go according to plan, and then Mother Nature throws some curveballs at us. So a few seeds might not germ, might not poke through. So realistically, if we're in that 16 to 19 plants per square foot, we're really happy with that stand. So back to the tape measure I mentioned, if your air seeder is 7.5 inch row spacing, we're going to measure out 19 inches on that tape measure and count the plants in there. If you're 10 inch spacing, we're counting out 14.5 inches. And for 12 inch spacing, that means targeting that 16 and 19 plants in a 12 inch measurement in a row. So
a lot of math goes into this evaluation of our plant stand. Math is good. Okay.
Yeah,
good to be precise, because that leads to a higher probability of success. Now, what are we exactly looking for? Like, obviously didn't make it, looks very healthy, but there's some plants that are in between. So what are we looking for here?
So when farmers get into the field, they should follow these steps to check winter survival and identify, signs of a healthy rye stand. So first, it's important to look for signs of green up and healthy root systems. Some brown or discolored leaves, especially in crops that had more growth in the fall, is quite normal. So don't be alarmed. We'll generally see some dieback on those bigger plants with more leaves. But we like to dig a little deeper underneath, and finding smaller green leaves underneath is a really good sign. If there are brown spots in the field that are concerning, it's recommended to dig up the plants and check for white, shiny, moist roots. So that'll generally indicate that the plants are still alive. And big thing we can't stress enough is patience is key. Warmer weather can really help fill these areas in. So don't be too quick to rush for judgment. So two things we like to do for checking winter survival. Very simple. The first one, just dig up a few plants, dirt and all, and put it in a pail or tray and bring them inside to a warm spot. Water is needed, and just keep an eye on them. In a few days, you should see some new growth. So new green leaves and those new white shiny roots that we talked about are a great sign your plant overwintered well. What we usually do as reps in the field is we'll go to those areas of concern, dig up plants from that area, and we'll hold them by the crown, and we'll snip off the bottom roots, so leaving about 3/4 of an inch on the root, and then the same with the top growth on the shoots above the crown. So we'll leave about 3/4 of an inch on either side, place those on a damp paper towel, and put them in a Ziploc bag and leave them in a warm windowsill or somewhere in the office. So And again, healthy plants will show root and shoot growth within a week for sure. Typically 3 to 5 days is what we've been seeing with some of the plants I've been digging up lately. So we have some great videos on how to do this on our YouTube channel and posted on our socials. So please follow us at KWS Canada on Instagram, X, and Facebook.
Yeah, great. That's a great place to find more information for sure. If you do have some questions about evaluating your stand, and similar to other crops, what I'm hearing from you is you got to exercise some patience too, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Patience is key. Like we're just starting to see some buds on the tree. You know, we're definitely not seeing any weeds in the field yet. So as it warms up and we get some moisture, we should start seeing things looking really good here.
Yeah, great stuff. We've been talking to Dan Bolton. He's Territory Manager for Eastern Prairies with KWS Seeds Canada. Dan, thanks a lot for joining us here today in this Product Spotlight.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. We love talking about hybrid rye any chance we can. So appreciate
Absolutely. Achieving some of those high yields that hybrid rye and the versatility that hybrid rye presents as well. We'll be right back here on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147 Sirius XM right after this.
Find everything you need for outstanding weed control in your wheat and barley from the cross-spectrum herbicide experts at Corteva. Corteva is proud to offer a wide selection of cross-spectrum herbicides for maximum convenience, effective resistance management, and customized control of your toughest grassy and broadleaf weeds. No matter what kind of weed challenges you're experiencing, we've got the right fit for your farm. Visit corteva.ca to learn more.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, with volatile markets and rising costs, now's your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Nuffield Canada does a lot of great work sending, being a part of getting people from across the country, all around the world, to do these very cool projects. And they've got a new application window open for the next class of Nuffield scholars. Joining us right now is the chair of Nuffield Canada. It is Steve Larouque. Hey, Steve, how are we doing?
Good, Shaun. How you doing?
Pretty good. Okay, I did I sum up Nuffield Canada there? I think it's more than that, but that would be my summation. You fill in the blanks for us.
That's a great pitch. So to fill in the blanks, Nuffield Canada, we've been around just about 75 years. So what we do is send people around the world to explore new ideas, innovations, policies, practices, and bring them home back to Canada to implement in our own businesses, our own farms and communities, and broadly Canadian agriculture. So we provide $20,000 bursaries to farmers, like other researchers, people in agribusiness professionals, people across the ag ecosystem. And what we do is we provide the network, because there's just over 2,000 alumni. So we send them around the world to learn new things and bring them home. And it's really to bring back new perspectives, to bring back new ideas, because oftentimes we find ourselves siloed in Canada. So what we do is create a network, allow them to go explore the world, learn new things, and bring them home and report on it. So the application process is from April 1st and closes June 30th. So what you do is apply online, go to nuffield.ca, and you'll have an Apply Now button. So you click on it, you'll find out some more information about the process, which is just part of it's written, part of it's a video, and then eventually it's an interview. So once the application's closed, the end of June, there'll be like a top 10 list put together, and there'll be formal interviews in July, and then we award people in September. So
now, who is the ideal? Like, there's people listening to this, like, well, I'm just a farmer, or I work for a large corp. I don't know if this doesn't fit for me. Does it fit all those people? Like, what is the profile?
Yeah, it absolutely does. The profile is people between the ages of 25 and 50. In fact, we've had people up to 60. So really, we're selecting for people who are curious, who are open-minded, who are generous with their time, shown through either on boards or committees or ag societies, people who are genuinely curious. So if that is you and you're a farmer, or you own an agribusiness, or you're in industry, like you're supporting farmers or supporting the ag network, you're in food processing, you're in fishing, forestry, fiber, people who are genuinely curious and want to learn something new and hungry for information, this is just a rocket ship for connection and community and bringing a lot of open-minded people together, which just leads to great conversations and huge networking and so much information brought home. It's a life-changing experience. So the ideal person is, between that 25 and 50, and it's really about the character of the individual.
I like that curiosity. Now, do I have to choose an area of because you could be lost, like be a distracted person every day, kind of going a bunch of different directions here. So we choose a theme or I guess a niche of the industry, or how does that work?
That's right. So part of the application process is to choose a topic that you're curious about, that you're interested in. In fact, we're putting together an idea bank for those who are curious and intelligent and generous, but don't necessarily know what they quite want to investigate just yet. But it certainly needs to be a topic that's relevant to your business or your community or Canadian agriculture. So those are the topics we're looking for. And they could be everything from resurgence in Indigenous agriculture to ag ecotourism to looking at ecosystem services on a farm level and how to make those profitable, not just a good idea. So we've got many topics that range from agritourism to even policy, looking at renewable energy and the impact of renewable energy and how that fits in our system. So
yeah, I could just imagine somebody like in the cropping sector or cattle feeding sector, being able to go see the way that other people do things and trying to, figure out what works, what doesn't, and trying to bring that home and just not applying all of it, but being able to just apply a sliver of it to make improvements like that. I just think that's so cool.
Yeah. There's nothing better than peer-to-peer knowledge, right? So what we provide is, because you're selecting for curious people who are open-minded, we provide a network and a platform. So you go to the kitchen tables, you walk the fields with the problem solver. So it's like a farmer to farmer. We're walking through fields, you're at the kitchen table. And because we break down the barriers, because there's no competition, I'm not in competition necessarily with someone in WA or in Western Australia, but I'll happy to learn and they're happy to share, because that's part of being in Nuffield, is really opening up your business, whether it's the numbers, whether it's the people, the culture, whatever it is you're looking for. We break down those barriers so you get right to work. And there's an automatic friendship that comes along with it, because you're in many cases staying with the very farms that you're investigating. So you have all these case studies from all around the world that you go to investigate, you build friendships, you build new relationships, and all of a sudden your world is really small. So all of a sudden you're talking to people in Brazil, you're talking to people in Western Australia or Zimbabwe or anywhere in the UK or France, anywhere, Brazil, Chile. So you're talking with all these farmers and agribusiness professionals who are all curious, who are all driven, and they're all coming together, and you get that network. All of a sudden, that's your everyday. That's your every week.
Well, I know a lot of people have become Nuffield scholars and very much enjoyed their experience. You got me kissed, Steve. I'm starting to wonder if I should apply.
Do it.
Yeah.
100% do it. Absolutely.
Do the radio show from the road.
Oh.
How much fun did we have? That's too much fun.
This is only a 10-minute segment, is it? Yeah, absolutely. You definitely need to do one.
Now, one of the things that I think you've kind of undersold here,
yeah,
what my observation has been, is that when these Nuffield scholars, whether it's the people in Canada or some of the alumni from around the world, when they get a chance to run into each other in meetings going forward, like, this is a peer group you have for the rest of your life.
It is. It's lifelong. So it's a 2-year program, but that's just the beginning of it. Really, that's almost like a starting point. You take your 2-year journey, you write your paper, you investigate, you build relationships, and from that point on, I'm a 2008 scholar. So from that point on, when I finished in 2010, it was a rocket ship for a very long time. And when I say that, it's like this huge community that you're part of, and it never ends. In fact, there's some other people who just said yesterday they had people come in from New South Wales and they hadn't seen them in forever, like 10 years. And all of a sudden, you're connected. they've come to Canada, they've come to visit, and they're visiting some farms, they're visiting some Nuffield alumni, and that's 12 years on since they've seen each other. So it's incredible.
Okay, so give us the goods again here. How do we apply? If we're interested, the real people in the RealAg audience here, well, give us the details. How do they apply?
Details are so applications open on April 1st. They close June 30th. Go to nuffield.ca and click apply now. All the details are right there. It's in plain English, so it should be easy enough to figure out and navigate the page. It's only 2 pages, and good luck.
Just a question for we here on Sirius XM. Of course, we've got a lot of U.S. listeners. Is there a Nuffield in the U.S. that people should be checking out?
There is. Yeah, Nuffield. Nuffield is part of the U.S. International community. So there's 16 countries, and the U.S. is part of them. So
awesome.
Look up Nuffield USA, and I'm sure you'll find that. I don't know the right website offhand, but I'm sure it's Nuffield USA, and you'll find Bart Ruth is the current chair.
Ah. Beauty. Wonderful. Oh, look at it. We're giving referrals for everybody.
Hey, let's do this.
Hey,
awesome.
Steve. Thanks a lot for joining us here, and all the best with this intake in the future of Nuffield Canada.
Right on. Thanks for having us, Shaun.
Hey, everybody. Vatterstad is partnering with Canadian farmers for outstanding emergence. Their line of tillage, seeding, and planting equipment offers solutions for all soil types, field conditions, and tillage practices, helping you to maximize yield. To learn more and find your local dealer, visit vatterstad.com. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Right now, people in agriculture and food are facing challenges that can feel overwhelming. If you need to talk, access the National Farm Crisis Line at 1-866-FARMS-01. That's 1-866-327-6701. It's 24/7 confidential help when you need it. Farm Credit Canada also has tools to support your long-term mental health. Learn more and access the crisis line at fcc.ca/wellness.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. We're going to get to a couple features on some products centered around technology here in a second. But first, with volatile markets and rising costs, now is your chance to be a part of the solution. It's time to secure your future with Genesis Fertilizers. Gain control and ensure access to locally produced nitrogen. Act now to protect your farm's future for generations. Visit genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. Okay, got a couple features here. We're always out and about when it comes to trade shows and conferences, and we do a lot of product features. Some of those don't make their way here to RealAg Radio. I grabbed 2 recent ones. One is from the Canadian Dairy XPO that happened recently in Ontario, and I also have one from Commodity Classic. So up first, we're going to hear from Dr. Shari Vanderpol with Cattleytics. Bern Tobin of RealAgriculture had a chance to catch up with her at the recent Canadian Dairy XPO.
Bernard Tobin at the Canadian Dairy XPO. I am over at Cattleytics now, catching up with CEO Dr. Shari Vanderpol. Dr. Vanderpol, nice to chat with you again.
Great to talk to you again, too.
Hey, we've talked about Cattleytics in the past, back 2 years ago, but things are changing. Tell us a little bit about the app and what you do.
Yeah, I'd love to tell you a bit about that. We've expanded what we do as far as task management to also include protocols and protocol management. So now you can actually create a protocol almost like a template and use that in the tasks you create. Also, tasks can be reoccurring too, so you can set them out over time, or you can have something that would be, let's say, sending your water tests before you do your pro action. Once a year, it'll come back up and remind you. We also have shift scheduling, so that specific to dairies, you can schedule your workers so that they know on their phone when to show up and they can swap shifts. And then we have staff training too, so that they can use protocols to be able to tell what they do and how they do it when they're starting off at your dairy.
Tell me about how producers are interacting with the app. Are they walking through the barn, discovering something that needs to get done, and working with the app?
Well, I mean, you brought up our producers, and really we have to do such a big shout out to the producers that have worked with us, because they've helped us make that better over time. And one of the things that they really wanted was pictures, because they had sometimes language barriers. So they'll go through, they'll take a picture of something that's broken, they'll put it on the app, and then when people have time to do that, they'll see exactly what it is, how to do it. They'll swipe it off so that then the person who's asking for that to be done sees that it's done. So really, we're taking the lead from them as far as how they use it.
Yeah. And there's more change afoot here. You were telling me about artificial intelligence. We use this so much in every part of our lives these days. You're actually integrating it into the app and letting producers use that to help them.
Yeah, for sure. So we want to be the first in Canada. We are the first in Canada to be using artificial intelligence for things like protocol creation. And so now, if you have a protocol that you want to create, then they can put basic instructions to it and press a magic button, and it'll generate your protocol. We still need you. We still need you to read it over, make sure it makes sense, make modifications. But this way, this is not only available in your system, but all of your staff can see it on their phones. And then when you ask for a bath to be made up and you're a task manager, all of those instructions are there, pictures are there if you want them, and if you want to link it to like a YouTube video or something like that, that's available too. So we're avoiding things like protocol drift and allowing the information to be, available to workers. And then if you want to do something like a contextual translation into Spanish, you can do that as well using AI.
So you're basically just writing that script right there on the spot, and you can adapt it, change it, and tweak it depending on what that task and what that schedule looks like.
Absolutely, and just being able to do this at the touch of a button was something we would dream of in the past, and we have it right here in farmers' hands today.
Shari, where can producers get more information about Cattleytics and your data-driven intuition?
You can always go to our website, which is www.cattleytics.com. Make sure there's an E in there, so cattle, and then YTICS, like cattle and analytics. And you can also come see us we're at most farm shows. We'd love to talk to you in person. And you can always download the app too and try it out. We're happy to give free trials if you reach out.
Great stuff. Thanks for making some time. We're Real Agriculture here at CDX.
Thank you very much.
That was Dr. Shari Vanderpol of Cattleytics. Next, now we've talked a little bit about dairy and some of the use of technology. Let's now hear from Case IH. And Bernd Tobin at the Commodity Classic in Denver, Colorado, back in early March, caught up with Kendal Quandahl, who was with Case IH, to talk about some of their software and technology platform.
Bernard Tobin here at the Commodity Classic in Denver, Colorado, over at Case IH, now talking with Kendal Quandahl. Kendal, how's it going?
It's a great day to be here out in Denver, seeing all kinds of producers here at Commodity Classic.
Yeah, I want to talk about Case IH's Field Ops. You rolled it out last year. Tell us about the rollout. 250 global users. What's the experience?
Yeah, so here at Case IH, we really pride ourselves on being built by farmers. So that not only means having farm kids like me be involved in the development and request of tools and features like Field Ops, it's also making sure that we bring these out to customers prior to release to make sure that we're actually really solving the problems that they face most often on their operation. So with Field Ops, we spent a long time in that development process working with customers in all different kinds of operations across the globe to collect their feedback and really hone in on the features that are going to most impact their operation.
Talk about Field Ops. Give us an overview of how, what's in there and how is it going to make your farming operation, as I say, more efficient.
So Field Ops really brings 2 to 3 different main pieces, depending on how you want to look at it. The first one is the connectivity to your dealership. So if we connect your equipment through the use of cellular modems, you can choose which dealers have access to see that equipment, and they can help you. Maybe it's troubleshoot. They could help you see what's going on your equipment. Maybe you have a planter setup question. We can remote display view into your Pro 1200 through Field Ops to be able to assist without having somebody come out to the farms. The second part is going to be really around the agronomic data management. So if you're uploading data off of your equipment, we collect so much information, planting, harvesting, all of that. We need somewhere to put it. So Field Ops lets us do that. And then third portion is really your fleet management. So being able to see on your own farm where everything is on your phone. So you can use the Field Ops app to do that. So you can keep yourself running. In that respect, you can set up geofencing curfews. So you're getting notifications. Maybe a machine is running somewhere where you didn't think it was supposed to be. So those three different, I'll say, work streams of Field Ops really bring it together in a nice package for producers.
Now, you're really excited about spring because you're going to bring some new applications, some new nuances. Tell me about AI boundary creating.
Yeah, so boundaries are either you've used them for a long time or you're new to boundaries. And what we've done with Field Ops for spring is actually create a tool called AI Boundary Creation that if you're not yet using a boundary today, we can use AI inside of Field Ops to create that boundary based off of as-applied maps and satellite imagery to build a really pretty accurate boundary for you to go to spring and get started with that boundary management. And then if you chose to use an updated in-field RTK recorded boundary in the future, we can load that right in over the top and really supplement that AI initially created boundary.
Tell me about I guess that whole farm management tool that it is. How do you see that working for a grower?
So one thing I really like to think about in spring, as a farmer myself, we run into a lot of inventory management challenges. So I live a long ways from where my family farm is, and we've got multiple different people. You're always doing different stuff at the same time, and sometimes we don't actually know what's sitting in the shed. So we've gone on our own farm to utilizing Field Ops as inventory management. So what we do, we preload all of our purchases. We have this many bags of seed, this many gallons of starter, all of that. We've got it all pre-purchased, it's ready. And then as applied maps automatically load into Field Ops, we count down that inventory. So we automatically can say, just quick looking at Field Ops, I think we're going to be short on this seed variety. Let's make sure we get some in advance or pick some up when we go to town.
Hey, Kendal, always great to chat with you. Tell us a little bit more about where growers can get more information on Field Ops.
So, a couple different routes. I always recommend going to your local Case IH dealership. They're your local experts on Field Ops and how that can integrate into your operation. But if you are excited to learn more right now, you can go to caseih.com and connect with our Field Ops platform there.
Thank you so much. Always great to connect with you, and thank you for making time for Real Agriculture.
Thanks for stopping by.
If you are interested, go to the Real Agriculture YouTube channel or realagriculture.com, and we do a ton of interviews just like that, kind of trying to get the latest and greatest in what's happening out there from a technology standpoint, machinery issues. Like, we're always out at some of these conferences and trade shows, really trying to take as much as and bring as much of it back to you that weren't able to attend some of these things, because you can't be in it all, but we definitely attempt to be. Also want to encourage you to go to realagriculture.com and find a column that Kelvin Hepner wrote related to the agricultural platforms for the conservatives and for the liberals. And you can do some contrast and compare. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. A lot of people had the reaction. They felt like, the conservatives were a little bit more, they maybe thought there'd be some more ag, but they weren't surprised. They have the ag vote. They need to put in their platform and go forward with the fact that we need to steer some of these urban voters more towards the Conservative Party. That's kind of, that I've heard a lot of that from the audience, so that's how summing up some of the feedback that we did get. Now, if you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find Real Agriculture across all the different social media platforms, or why not just call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll, of course, chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio episode brought to you by Coragen Max Insecticide from FMC. When you need to protect your crops from damaging insects, Coragen Max Insecticide delivers fast, selective, extended control of grasshoppers, Bertha armyworms, diamondback moth, cutworms, and more. Ask your retailer or visit ag.fmc.com/ca today.